So Beck, we've talked a bit about the real preparation that we need to do with children and young people to make sure they've got a kind of safety net so they can return to a relaxed state when they've kind of touched on something upsetting or difficult. How would you choose which other elements to use with children and young people? I know in the guide we start with formulation, and that's a source of information really about the child or young person that we're working with, and how might that help us to make decisions about which activities to use or which kind of sections to kind of move towards after we've done those relaxation techniques and after we've maybe helped the child or young person say something about their experience of the death.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I think that's a really important thing for us to consider, and probably going back in the guide to that section about how we identify traumatic bereavement is going to be key for us thinking about, okay, so what activities do we want to use? So in the guide there's that section about formulation where you're drawing together, ideally with the child and young person, and gathering the information about the factors that have made it hard, those predisposing, the triggers of what happened around the death that precipitating, and then they kind of lead into this middle part, the presenting need. So we started to draw up with listening to the child and young person about the ways their grief is impacting on them. We started to draw up what the difficulties are. For Wesley, we were seeing very much that he was becoming disengaged, had withdrawn from his peers, was lacking motivation, even engaging with mum at home had been hard. So we kind of got an idea of something around there. We might then have gone on to use some of the tools and measures. Maybe with Wesley, we would have used the ARCADS, not so much for the anxiety side, but it might have showed us that his low mood and depression score was a little bit higher. And that might give us an indication, actually, that matches what Wesley's telling me, what I'm hearing from mum, along with what we've got in the formulation. And then I guess it's about having a look. We've done some work on relaxation. We've had a really good think about what happened when your dad died, and we're beginning to understand what's made it so hard for you, the meaning you've made from that death, and you've done amazingly at doing that. I'm also hearing that actually it's really hard for you to engage. There were lots of things you used to enjoy doing, but actually you can kind of see them out there in the distance, but they're not things that you feel ready to take a step. And that's making me wonder whether we could do some work specifically about rebuilding your life, and doing some of those, start beginning to get you back to doing some other things you used to enjoy, and see how that feels for you. So kind of really leading on from that formulation, the information we've gathered, and then asking the young person and checking we've got it right.
So there's that thinking through process for the adult, and really kind of trying to follow that thread, that sort of logical thread of, these are the things I've noticed, these are the things that have come up in the questionnaires that I've used, these are the things that other people, say the school or the parents, have told me, and that leads me to think that this might be the most useful kind of activity that we could do. But then checking it out with the young person and seeing if that makes sense to them as well and fits with their sense of what they need. That's really helpful. And I guess it just reminds me that we're not suggesting in the guide that every element is necessary. You don't have to work your way through kind of using every activity and kind of covering everything.
We would want to avoid some kind of scattergun where you do this activity, and this one in a kind of vague hope that something is helpful, that it is really tailored to the young person and the thing that they're struggling with most, the aspects that are impacting on their life the most. But by checking in that we've got it right, we also help the young person hopefully feel that we've listened to them and we're validating what they're feeling and thinking and experiencing, and then we can move into, should we have a go at this? Some young people have found this is helpful. The evidence suggests that when we're feeling like that, and we can kind of start to introduce those new activities, the right activity, hopefully, for that child or young person.
So it sounds like it's sort of, once you're convinced that that might be helpful, it's also about getting the young person on board and kind of working in partnership and making sure that you're sort of setting off into that process together.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons we also wanted to include some psychoeducation, so that the practitioner's got a really clear idea about why we're suggesting that activity, and then they can take that and explain to the child or young person, this is why we think this one might be helpful. We wonder whether this is what's happening for you. And we know that within low mood, that kind of cycle, that vicious circle that's going round of feeling low, thinking low things, my life's rubbish, and then not wanting to do things, kind of keeps that circle of thoughts, feelings and behaviours going. We also know that if we wait for the mood to change. Often a young person will say, well, I'll just wait until I feel better and then I'll start doing things again. Actually, you might not feel better because you're still trapped in that cycle. So it's about saying, should we try doing something different just to see how it works? And let's collaborate, let's give it a go, and see what happens.
So there's a process in a way of kind of deciding together, and I think it's a really good idea to use those visuals to kind of show, for example, if you're going to show Wesley, show him how his kind of thoughts and feelings are compounding his decisions, which actually then lead to him feeling low, even more. So show him that cycle and how that kind of is evidence that goes against the idea that things will just get better on their own, that actually something different needs to happen.
And that should we just try something different and see how it goes?